Amigos, hemos retomado la transmisión, estamos afuera de la fiscalía y bueno, se han difundido unas fotografías.
These are the screams of parents whose sons had just appeared in a cartel video. Before authorities could tell them what happened, the internet already had. The 5 young men were Roberto, Diego, Uriel, Jaime, and Dante, ranging in age from 19 to 22, all raised in the same neighborhood and friends since childhood. Like many young people their age, some were in school, others were working, and one had a bright future as an athlete. None of them had any documented connection to organized crime. Every account gathered afterward describes the same thing: a close group of working friends who had grown up climbing the same hillside together. On Friday, August 11th, 2023, the group went to the Feria de Lagos, the city's annual fair. The fair had been running for about 2 weeks and would continue for 2 more. Around 11 p.m., they gathered at the Mirador de San Miguel, a lookout on the edge of town where the 5 friends had been meeting since childhood to sit above the city and talk. While waiting for the others to arrive, one of them sent a final text message to his brother. It was the last confirmed contact any of their families had with any of the 5. What happened between that final message and their disappearance has never been agreed upon, and this is where the case starts to fracture into 2 different stories that do not match. One account, sourced to a federal intelligence contact and reported by a major Mexican outlet, holds that the group met someone connected to the Jalisco New Generation Cartel at the fairgrounds itself in a neighborhood some distance from the lookout, tied to a job offer, the kind of listing that promises steady pay for private security work, a documented method cartels use across Mexico to bring people in without them realizing who they're actually signing up with. A second account, gathered from witnesses and reported by a different journalist at the very same outlet, says none of that happened at the fair at all, that the interception happened later directly at the lookout point, and that several people saw armed men arrive and take the group from the spot where they were sitting. Investigators later found blood evidence exactly at the Mirador de San Miguel, which supports the second version. It does not rule out the first. It is entirely possible both are true, that the group met someone at the fair and were told to wait at the lookout, and that the actual abduction happened once they got there. Reconstructing their movements in those final hours became one of the investigation's central, unresolved problems, and it still is. Their families did not wait for police to act. A brown Volkswagen Jetta belonging to the group was found abandoned near a church, a short walk from the lookout, with no signs of a struggle and nothing obviously missing from it. Word spread overnight. Parents began organizing their own search before the sun came up, checking hospitals, driving the roads out of town, filing a formal report the next morning. Roberto's father returned to the lookout again and again over the following days. At one point, he broadcast live from the spot, calling out for his son by the nickname he had used in childhood, urging him to come back for the morning run they used to take together. 3 days later, on the night of August 14, an image began spreading across social media. It showed the 5 men inside a property, kneeling with their hands tied behind their backs. They had clearly been beaten. Soon after, a video appeared. Family members recognized the men's clothing almost immediately. In the footage, one of the captives was forced, under the orders of the armed men holding them, to use a stone and a blade against one of his own friends. The video also included a written message referencing a nickname linked to the leadership of the Sinaloa cartel. Later, the footage was publicly described as dehumanizing, a word that reflected not only the violence but also the fact that it had been recorded and shared for others to watch. Forcing a captive to hurt or kill someone they know is not a new method in Mexico's cartel violence. It has surfaced before, going back well over a decade, used on people who are being pressured to join and have refused, or on people a cartel wants to make an example of. The point of it is control. It breaks a person before they can resist, and it sends a message to everyone else watching, whether that message is aimed at rivals, at the public, or at future recruits who might think about saying no. 2 days after the video surfaced, at his regular morning press conference on August 16th, President Andres Lopez was asked directly about the case. In response, he told an unrelated joke about a man asking his wife for money to go to the market. He did not otherwise address the disappearance at that briefing. Mexican media replayed the moment for days afterward, holding it up as proof of a government seen as detached from the violence tearing through parts of the country. A president who had been handed a direct question about 5 missing sons and answered with an anecdote about pocket change. The investigation that followed produced 2 separate discoveries of human remains, and neither gave the families the certainty they needed. On August 16th and 17th, authorities searched a property in a community called La Trojoy and recovered burned bone fragments and 4 skulls. For a moment, it looked like the case had reached its end. Then, on August 23rd, Jalisco's state government reversed course. A physical marker found among the bones, officials said, indicated these remains did not belong to the 5 missing men after all. Whoever those remains belonged to, they were someone else in a different tragedy that had nothing to do with this one. A second site was searched, a brick factory in a neighborhood called La Orilla del Agua, where more remains were recovered on August 20th and 21st. By late October, a state security official said there was a high degree of presumption that these did belong to the 5 friends. That word, presumption, is the last word anyone in an official capacity has ever used about it. It was never converted into a confirmed identification. 2 years after the disappearance, according to the most recent reporting available, the families were still waiting. One sister of one of the victims said publicly that there had been no progress at all, that they still did not know what had actually happened to the remains being tested, that they were still simply waiting for results that never arrived. One father said, almost word for word, that they remained exactly where they had been on the first day, with almost no progress made since. In December of 2023, a federal operation involving the Army, the National Guard, and federal prosecutors arrested 5 men described as members of a Jalisco New Generation cartel cell operating in the northern part of the state, a unit whose job in that region was explicitly to keep the Sinaloa cartel from expanding into it. Officials linked this cell to the abduction and killing of the 5 friends, and separately to an ambush weeks earlier that had killed 3 soldiers. This is where the case's central contradiction becomes impossible to ignore. The video that first surfaced carried a marking pointing directly to the Sinaloa cartel's leadership, but the cell the government arrested for the killings was, by the government's own description, fighting against Sinaloa, not working for it. Analysts who study Mexican cartels have long documented a pattern of rival groups stamping a competitor's name onto violence they didn't commit, specifically to shift blame or sow confusion about who actually controls a given piece of ground. Whether that is what happened here, whether the video's marking was a deliberate piece of disinformation aimed at framing a rival, has never been officially resolved. It remains, to this day, an open question sitting at the center of one of the most watched cartel cases in recent Mexican history. This is not the first time forced violence between captives has surfaced out of Mexico. In 2010, the old Zetas cartel abducted men in Tamaulipas and forced those who refused to work for them to beat each other to death with sledgehammers. The following year, authorities in that same state uncovered 48 clandestine graves holding the remains of 193 people, most of them killed the same way, their skulls crushed with blunt force. The pattern in Lagos de Moreno echoes that same method more than a decade later, adapted for an era where the footage does not stay contained to a warehouse or a mass grave. That is the part of this story that reaches beyond one city. The method investigators believe was used to lure these 5 friends, a job offer that looks completely ordinary until the moment someone accepts it, has been documented across multiple Mexican states, run through call centers and social media pages that can look exactly like any other local business. Somebody calls the number, somebody sets up a meeting point. By the time the applicant understands who they are actually meeting, they are standing in front of armed men with no way to walk back out. It is a system built specifically to look harmless right up until it isn't, and it has worked on more than one group of friends who thought they were simply looking for a summer job. Jalisco is one of the highest ranking states in Mexico for reported missing persons, part of a national total that has climbed past 100,000 disappearances according to official figures. Most of those cases never generate a headline, never get a video that reaches international news, never get a federal operation launched in response to public outrage. They stay local, absorbed into a number that keeps climbing without most of the country ever hearing the names attached to it. At the Mirador de San Miguel, where the 5 were last seen together, their families later painted a mural of the group's faces and had their names carved into the stone of the lookout itself. It has become the place relatives return to, the same hillside the 5 of them used to climb as children, now marked with their names instead of just their laughter. 2 years on, no one has been formally, forensically confirmed to have died. No complete account of that single night, the fair, the lookout, the meeting, the abduction, has ever been agreed upon by the people investigating it. 2 cartels have each at different points been treated as the likely culprit. 5 families are still waiting on an answer that, as of the most recent reporting available, has still not come.